Have you ever looked at Kanye West and thought, how does one person keep changing music, fashion and culture over and over again? Because whether you love him or hate him, it's difficult to ignore him. Every decade produces talented artists, but very few completely reshape the industry. Is it simply confidence? Is it genius? Or is there something hidden in his astrology and numerology that explains why he's constantly reinventing himself? Today, we're diving into Kanye West, astrology and numerology to uncover why he's such a creative distributor, why he refuses to follow the crowd, and why he continues to influence culture despite constant controversy. Whether you're a fan or not, Kanye has changed multiple industries: music, fashion, production, pop culture. He's the kind of person that doesn't seem interested in fitting into existing systems. He wants to build entirely new ones. He's constantly chasing ideas that most people think are impossible, until suddenly everyone starts copying them. And when we look at his chart, it starts to make a lot of sense. Let's start with Kanye's sun. So he's a Gemini. Most people think Gemini, they think talkative, funny, two-faced. But Gemini at its highest level is curiosity. It's collecting ideas, connecting the dots, seeing possibilities that others miss. Geminis are lifelong students. They're fascinated by information and they absorb everything around them. I think Gemini can be really misunderstood for that reason, is that it really is about learning, and sometimes when it's bored, it can create something interesting for itself. It's a very out-of-the-box thinker. So his sun is placed in the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of the unconscious, dreams, fantasies, spirituality, isolation, the invisible world. People with strong 12th house placements feel they see the world very differently to the rest of us. And a lot of the time they can be really misunderstood because they operate from intuition rather than logic a lot of the time. And I don't even know if they really know that about themselves because it's such a hidden place even for themselves. It's very difficult to explain, and it's something that 12th house people will understand. So when you have the sun in the 12th house, the sun being your ego, your sense of self, it actually gets very weakened here, which is interesting for Kanye because I think a lot of people would say he's got a big ego.
I'm standing up and I'm telling you, I am Warhol. I am the #1 most impactful artist of our generation. I am Shakespeare in the flesh. Walt Disney, Nike, Google. Now, who's going to be the Medici family and stand up and let me create more? Or do you want to marginalize me till I'm out of my moment?
But already, if you've got sun in the 12th house, you instantly don't really have a big ego. So it's interesting. A lot of people with that placement also have people project onto them and decide they know exactly what their agenda is and how they're looking at things, when really it's a projection of themselves. And it's actually because they're so vague and such a mystery to not only themselves but other people, so we can't help but then project what we think of them. So he would be a very misunderstood individual. I don't know whether he even cares. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, because his whole life he's had to deal with that. And so the sun is right next to Jupiter, it's conjunct Jupiter. So this amplifies his ego, and everything that he wants to do will be optimized by this Jupiter feeling. This will magnify his vision, his beliefs, his confidence, his sense of self. So it's actually quite a healthy confidence, although you wouldn't think so. This is what I found really interesting, because it really does come across as quite arrogant. But looking at his chart, I think it's a very healthy, dreamlike confidence. However, I am not referring to any mental health issues he has, so maybe other things come into it, but his raw personality is actually really quite special. I would say that positioning is quite magical. This is why he would dream so impossibly big. This placement is so optimistic and believes it can do anything, and it believes anyone else can also do anything. It's very joyful and larger than life. Now let's talk about Mercury. So Mercury is how we think. It's how we communicate, how we process ideas. Kanye's Mercury is in Taurus. Although he seems to talk very impulsively, everything he'll say will have a grounded edge to it. He will have actually thought this through. His thoughts and ideas will be spoken in a very grounded manner with conviction. And once he decides this, it's going to be very hard to change what he thinks. That's one flaw I would say about a Taurus Mercury, is it's very, the same with any fixed Mercury, it's very hard to change their ideas. So they're very fixed in what they believe. In some ways that can be a positive, but I would say it's quite hard for other people to have an influence on him. So this Mercury is placed in the 11th house, which I think is really obvious. The 11th house is the house of community, of society. It rules trends and the future. This is a very big ideas placement. If you have Mercury in the 11th house, your ideas are going to be expanded more than most. And you can see that the way that Kanye has all these ideas of the future, he's always thinking the future, and he's thinking from a world point of view of the bigger picture, which I think he finds frustrating that people seem to think much more small than he does.
Perspective on the next way of living. These are these fully sustainable cities.
He also seems to not like being pigeonholed, which is a big 11th house thing. So he doesn't want to be tied down to just music or even just being a producer. He's thinking, well, I can do anything. So who's going to stop me? And that's a part of his personality. That's part of his journey where he has to, or he feels he has to break these structures.
I felt so frustrated in the way I've been marginalized and held back. To me, don't nothing matter to me except for the people and the way I can affect them.
These ideas aren't designed to stay private. Anybody with Mercury in the 11th house, their ideas aren't designed to stay private. They're designed to be broadcasts. He's supposed to influence the collective. Rather than trying to people please, he seems to really challenge the status quo, which is why his words and ideas can really spark public debates. And I think his Mercury in the 11th really gives him the ability to make millions of people talk about the same subject, or whatever subject he would like them to talk about. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful parts of his chart. He's got Mars, Venus and Chiron all conjunct, meaning all close together in the 10th house. The 10th house is about your public reputation. This is the big career house. It's related to legacy, success, what you're remembered for. People with 10th house placements tend to really care what legacy they leave, and they really care about their career, and usually this is connected to a parent that has really influenced them in some way. So Mars being the planet of ambition and drive, that means wherever you have Mars, you have a lot of energy. He has a lot of energy in this career house. Venus gives this artistic talent that he has, beauty, creativity, taste, and then Chiron is known as the wounded healer. So wherever we have Chiron, whatever planet it touches or whatever house it's in, we have this real wound and insecurity, but it can really turn into something where you really help people with this. So the fact that it's touching two of his major inner planets, this is going to make him have these deep insecurities, and I think he's really tried to battle them and conquer them.
Do it yourself.
Halfway.
Take a few steps back to go.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
Kanye.
I've been doing this more than you.
Doing what?
You ain't got.
Come on, chill out.
You
bro.
ain't got the
Kanye,
answers.
relax.
You ain't got the
Bro,
answers.
I'm asking you.
You
a
ain't been doing the
question.
education.
Bro.
You ain't been doing the education.
Kanye, calm down.
You don't have the answers though.
Calm down.
Because you trying to give me advice about
No,
something.
no,
you ain't
listen.
got the answer. You ain't spent $13 million of your own money
You're
trying to empower
absolutely right.
yourself.
Yes, but I spent.
And so I feel like his career, he might have felt like he's always got to fight. Whenever anybody has had any comments on him, I'm sure it would massively affect him, and he'd want to say, no, that's not what I want to do. And he will have had experiences in his childhood that will have triggered these positions to take place. And so his career would be very deeply personal to him, and he'd be very fragile in this area. And so creating art and doing what he does as a career would be so deeply personal. And so when he's creating or doing anything to do with his career, this is almost like this is life to him. That is his life. That's his lifestyle. Some people have very separate identities when it comes to their career, but for him it's enmeshed into who he is. And I'd imagine his music and his fashion, whatever he does, is very therapeutic and very healing for him. And so when it comes to Kanye, his work is incredibly vulnerable. And so he puts his emotions directly into his art. And his albums almost feel like journal entries. And his fashion reflects his internal world. And that fight that he has of doing something different and proving that he can do this. Everything becomes part of a story. It really is difficult to separate Kanye as the person from Kanye as the artist, because in his chart, they're almost impossible to separate. Now this will lead into his Pisces moon. So the moon represents our emotional world, and Pisces is one of the most imaginative, sensitive, vulnerable signs. And these are people that don't just feel and absorb emotions, they'll almost blur the lines of reality. This is a very fantasy-like placement. Now he already has Sun in the 12th house, which has a similar theme to Pisces moon. So his dreams, his art, his spirituality will all be enmeshed in how he feels and who he is. This is a really common placement for musicians, for poets, for filmmakers, creative types of people, visionaries, people who create worlds. If you've listened to Kanye's music, especially albums like 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or Donda, you can really hear that emotional depth and that fantasy-like place where he goes to. His music almost feels cinematic, dreamlike, sometimes chaotic, and sometimes deeply vulnerable. And that would come from his Pisces moon, also his sun in the 12th. So now let's look at his numerology. So Kanye West is a life path 11, and 11 is one of the master numbers. So with numerology, you tend to go to 9, and then you've got 11, 22 and 33 are master numbers. They're very quite special numbers. They're a lot more intense and deep, and this will really amplify everything else we've spoken about in his chart. These people often feel very different from an early age, and this alone is a very visionary number. They're people that tend to inspire others, people that challenge the collective, and they often receive ideas that seem ahead of their time. Now, the challenge is learning to channel that energy. And like I say about master numbers, everything's amplified. So the highs are high, the lows are low. And when they become balanced, they can really influence millions of people. It's also a very emotional number because it's also like the 2. Kanye's first pinnacle was a 5. I think this is really obvious. This is the number of change, freedom, adventure, expansion, spreading your wings, going for it, experimentation. And looking at his early life, he never stayed in one lane. He never wanted to be tied down to just one thing. Now, if you notice, I'll say similar themes throughout this because this is a big theme for him, where he feels contained. And it's almost triggering to him. I'm sure there'd be certain things in his childhood that would have made him feel like that. And so he carries it on through life where he has this fight to not let anybody cage him. So this time in his life, he would have been exploring different ideas and really pushing the boundaries. And that would have been 0 to 34. So then in his second pinnacle from 34 to 43, he actually goes into another 5. So again, a familiar energy, he knows all about this. But this is at a more wise part of his life. So life pretty much doubled down on the same lesson again. Expansion, don't let people cage you in. Do something that people don't expect you to do, you know. And also they struggle to be bored. You know, that's really difficult for them. So they would be chasing excitement constantly. And you notice him constantly reinventing himself, constantly speaking up for people and doing the unthinkable. One thing I will say about the 5 is it's not a very grounded energy, similar to the 3. So if you have any addictive traits, this will really be amplified around this time period. So if you're an addict, some people can honestly be in that period of their life where their addiction's sky high. But it's not just addiction. They will also be feeling freedom of some sort, and expansion. So all these themes are still true, but the downside of it can be, even like if you have mental health issues, a lot of things can be amplified. I know he didn't want to take his medication in this time period again. That would probably feel like he's caging himself in. And these are the balances that you have to consider when he's got children or he's got a wife or family. But he really seems like a very solo person. I'm not sure if he's an only child, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was. It seems like he's on his own journey, and his journey is huge, but also it's difficult to be on that ride with him. And that leads on to his third pinnacle that he's currently in, and that was a 1. Now, the 1 obviously being a very solo journey. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be in relationships or anything, but it would very much be about him and what he wants to do, and he will make things happen by himself. It's not big on teamwork. This chapter is about independence and leadership and building something new. It's big on new beginnings, new starts, fresh ideas. And the 1 doesn't like to follow other people's paths. It likes to carve out one of its own. Now, only a few years into this pinnacle, he went through his divorce. And I think I can only imagine he probably felt like, well, I've got to do this by myself, his mission and what he wants to do. So what I love about looking at celebrities' charts is that it's not just about the celebrity. Celebrities are like mirrors to us. They really show us different ways humans can push their potential and express themselves. When I look at Kanye's chart, I can see someone that refuses to do what people are forcing him to do, or refuses to be caged into this box that you think he can fit into. He constantly breaks down those barriers. He's so emotional. He really taps into that emotional world, that fantasy world so much, and he'd be so creative with the Gemini and the Pisces. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of energy, a lot of optimism, a lot of dreaming big. Now, because he's got those 10th house planets, I think that's really been exerted through his career. We've been able to see a lot of his potential. He really has such a powerful force that can inspire and encourage people, motivate people. So whether you admire him or not, it's hard to deny he's left this permanent mark on culture. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Is there something I've missed out? Can you really see the themes throughout his chart and his numerology? And is there another celebrity that you would like me to break down? Let me know in the comments. And if you love astrology and numerology and celebrity deep dives and looking at people's psychology and the background of how people work, then please do subscribe to That Astrology Girl. I'll have many more videos like this coming up. And that's my 2 cents. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.